This week, what is America? What is American? Is the Muslim ban or the bombs we drop or the fear and hate around immigration really un-American? And furthermore, are the horrendous happenings in the Trump administration unique to him, or are they just part of a long tradition of fear, hate, greed, and injustice? And finally, Medea Benjamin sits down with us to talk Saudi Arabia and our twisted ties to this unjust kingdom. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. There have been so many despicable acts emanating from the new administration that even if this were a daily show, it'd be damn near impossible to cover them all. From slashing regulations to walls, to bans, to personnel choices, to reinstating the global gag rule, which prevents foreign organizations receiving U.S. government funding from not only performing, but even discussing abortions. It's been a long 2.5 weeks. And hell, by the time you actually watch this, there might even be more shit to pile onto that already monstrous mountain of refuse. But it's important to recognize that this steaming pile is not all Trump's doing. Yes, God, I wish it were. But presidents and administrations have been lobbing the waste of human common sense and decency onto our exceptional American system for quite some time. Sure, Obama might look good from where you're standing, but if you step outside party lines, you'll see that Obama was no picnic for the people or planet. For example, Trump is all about building this border wall to keep out those lazy Mexicans that work so hard to steal our jobs. However, that makes sense. Leaving aside the fact that Congress would still have to okay any budget for this amazingly stupid venture, which, side note, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, and Dianne Feinstein all voted for back in '06. Obama has already proven that you don't need a wall to be an asshole on immigration. Already by 2015, Obama had deported roughly 2.5 million people, more than any other president in U.S. history. More, in fact, than all of the 20th century presidents combined. Sit with that for a second. Okay, how about international affairs? In late January, Glenn Greenwald penned this piece for The Intercept with a title that pretty much sums up that aforementioned collaborative dung heap. Obama killed a 16-year-old American in Yemen. Trump just killed his 8-year-old sister. In 2010, Obama ordered a CIA drone strike that killed 16-year-old Colorado-born Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki 2 weeks after another CIA drone killed his father, Anwar al-Awlaki, also an American citizen. Obama's administration claimed the killing of the son was collateral damage, but never shied away from the killing of the father, despite the fact that as an American citizen, Anwar had the right to a trial and due process. And his son, well, what kind of protection should he have had? Or his American citizen sister who was just killed last week? Both kids, both innocent victims, the collateral damage of our ongoing wars in the Middle East. And the most recent Muslim ban is just another symptom, although undoubtedly unique and grotesque, of Islamophobia and war-fueled hateful rhetoric. Indeed, 6 of the 7 countries on Trump's blacklist have been bombed by the U.S. in the recent past, or are currently being bombed by the U.S., Yemen included. Senator Chris Murphy tweeted this pointed statement a couple of weeks ago. "We bomb your country, creating a humanitarian nightmare, then lock you inside. That's a horror movie, not a foreign policy." Except that this horror movie is our foreign policy and has been for decades. Like the inevitable, unbelievable, and fucking awful 20 sequels to Saw or Halloween. As of now, Iran is the only country on that list that hasn't been bombed by us recently, but hey, give it a few weeks because Iran announced last week that it will cease to use the US dollar in its financial and foreign exchange reports starting March 21st. Citing the issues that Iran has had with U.S. politicians and the latest travel ban, Iran's move could have a severe impact on the U.S. economy. And here's a quick rundown on how. In the 70s, Saudi Arabia signed a deal with then President Nixon to, quote, maintain the dollar as the standard oil exchange currency in exchange for military support from America. The rest of OPEC, including Iran, jumped on board with the dollar standard agreement. Fast forward to today, and OPEC countries account for 42% of oil production and over 70% of global oil reserves. And because of the immense economic machine that OPEC is, they help to bolster the dollar, keeping it as the world's reserve currency, thereby keeping our economy from appearing as shitty and faulty as it really is. But if Iran, who holds 13% of OPEC's oil reserves, cashes out, so to speak, that threatens our glass house on a hill. So what's the plan? Is Trump going to go 7 for 7? It's very possible, especially after the announcement of sanctions renewal or indeed the introduction in the House of House Joint Resolution 10, which is matter-of-factly called Authorization of Use of Force Against Iran Resolution. HJR 10 authorizes the president to use the U.S. armed forces as necessary in order to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. Where have I heard that before? Something, they have weapons, we have to bomb them. Iraq? The Bush and Cheney days? Or how about when Libya, a smaller oil-producing nation than Iran, threatened to shift from the petrodollar just before getting the shit bombed out of it by good old Uncle Sam and your favorite shill on the Hill, Hillary Clinton. You know, it's almost like administrations have just been making shit up in order to bomb the Middle East for decades. It's that sequel to the sequel to the sequel, and much like a shitty horror movie sequel, the killer only kills because he or she enjoys it. Not because some imminent threat to their safety. No one's threatening to stick an Uzi down Mike Myers' throat, thereby requiring him to defend himself with a rusty old kitchen knife. No. We, much like Mike Myers, but even more sick as we don a mask of democracy and justice, we do this because America, and because money. Which of the 7 nations in Trump's travel ban actually pose a threat to us? 0. 0 Americans have been killed by terrorists from any of the countries included in the Muslim ban. Saudi Arabia, however, is home to 15 of the 9/11 hijackers, a well-known funder of terrorist organizations and the founders of Wahhabism, the extremist version of Islam that Al-Qaeda and ISIS subscribe to. Saudi Arabia is also home to 8 of Trump's companies tied to hotel interests. Clinton, too, was no stranger to Saudi cash, getting millions from both private persons and organizations directly tied to the kingdom. As Secretary of State, she was more than cozy with the kingdom while somehow also being a beacon of feminism. That's kind of like that lazy Mexicans work hard to steal our jobs kind of sentence. Anyway, also left off the list were Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey, countries that have all directly produced terrorists or aided existing groups. For example, Turkey's penchant for training and sheltering members of ISIS. These countries also have Trump in common. Whether that be LLCs in Egypt, golf courses in the UAE, or high-rises in Turkey. So take note, Iran. If you want to avoid getting bombed, hold on to that dollar and open yourself up to Father Capitalism and his bastard son Trump. Because again, that's what it's all about. The travel ban and the bombs have never been about our safety. Because newsflash, you can't bomb people into submission. You can only bomb them into extremism. And that's exactly what we're doing. Either directly or through proxy wars via our aforementioned allies, the Saudis. And we'll dive deeper into the House of Saud in a minute, but let's first keep tracing that red thread of American exceptionalism. As Greenwald writes in the aforementioned article, quote, some of the current abuses are the decades-old byproduct of a mindset and system of war and executive powers that all need uprooting. Obscuring these facts or allowing those responsible to posture as opponents of all of this is not just misleading, but counterproductive. Much of this resides on an odious continuum and did not just appear out of nowhere. The whole damn system is guilty as hell. This isn't just about Trump, and as I've said before, it can't be. What's happening right now has roots. This isn't the rise of a new world order, it's the continuation of one. For example, the threat of a coup from Trump's administration, a white and gold overthrow of the workings of our system, is in many a journalist's inkwells at the moment. And yes, Stephen Bannon is not fucking around, that's quite clear. As Trump's top aide and now brazen infiltrator of the inner circles of the National Security Council, Bannon's nationalistic dictatorial drive is not something to downplay. Indeed, the regime's main organizational goal right now is to transfer all effective power to a tight inner circle, eliminating any possible checks from either the federal bureaucracy, Congress, or the courts. Departments are being reorganized or purged to effect this. But even here, the groundwork was laid long before Trump hit the campaign trail. Truly, Obama left Trump a dangerous amount of power previously unavailable to a president. For example, the largest surveillance system in the history of mankind, the NDAA, which we discussed in episode 95, the indefinite detention power couched within it, the Espionage Act prosecutions which Obama used on more whistleblowers than any president before him, the aforementioned targeted killings, and one of the most beefed-up military budgets of all time. Obama left with a wildly non-transparent, trigger-happy, and in many ways unaccountable office waiting to be filled. Trump, Bannon, and the whole white-hooded circus are now taking advantage of these tools and finding new ones to consolidate power and rise above checks and balances. This is America. It is American to hate immigrants, Italians, Jews, Poles, Irish, Chinese, Japanese. It is American to bomb the innocent. It is American to oppress the oppressed and coddle the coddled. It is American to put profit over people and planet always. It is American to fear, to hate, to take. Trump and co. are incredibly dangerous, but they are an American creation, a plotted point on a trajectory that's been in play for a long time, in no small part due to the Democrats and their neoliberalist policies. The only thing that ever shoved this trajectory out of line is us. And I've said that shit before, and I will broken record it till the end days because we have to hear this. We have to understand this. Because our fight is not against Trump. It's against the entire system that birthed him, and I fucking wish we could have aborted that failed fetus. But we didn't, and here we are. And it is so awesome that so many people are getting active, that protests are continuous and strong, that dissent is blossoming. But don't let up. Don't give up. Fight, always fight, but don't fight only because you think the sky is falling now. It's already been falling. And if that sounds pessimistic, consider that optimism is just hope minus realism. And we need to see the real picture in order to have hope in fighting this beast. The whole system, and not just the latest, biggest, and most disgusting and orange boil on a sick body politic. You can't fight cancer by fighting the outward signs. And you can't fight the American nightmare that is today without understanding the flaws in the American dreams of yesterday. You have to know your history to understand your present, and have the ability to shape the future. That is what we must do now. Trump is American. The corporatocratic system is American. And as Americans, it's our job to shut that shit down. I felt a heartbreak when I got out of bed. I felt a mother's tears for the years she won't see, the years she has left to do not but grieve. I felt the anguish of pain, the kind that lays claim to your body, your brain, your soul filled with hate, then capped off with sadness, a cyclical madness. I felt it in my bones. I saw the gilded thrones. I smelled the blood-stained gold. I felt my body quake. I saw myself on that red thread, connected to the pain, tied all up in the hate. I saw my role marked in their goals, a citizen, behold. A child of empire, I am stained with war. I am stained with mother's tears. I feel it in my bones. The people sway with baseless fears. The anguish in me grows. The dollars used to make kids fodder echo in my soul. I stand here mute. My feet, my hands, my legs, my arms, my torso, neck, and head, my body. My body stands in silence. The heartbreak twists around my veins. I let it hold that space. I let it be my cage for now. I lift my hands and let my palms look deep into my eyes. Then on these lines we sign a pact, that from this empty we will act, that these same hands will work to build the world that my eyes dream. The cage dissolves and I evolve to something more than me. The heartbreak pieced my body whole, and through my broken, I'm complete. Replete with all our will to be. Yours is mine and yours and we. Can none of us be free when pain and hate make chains for greed? I feel the heartbreak, and now I speak. My body moves, my ears do hear, my eyes do see. The red thread sweeps this path, my feet do walk, do move, do dance with that same pain that breathes our shared humanity. My will to be is yours as mine is yours and we, through broken breaking break, to be the light that breaks the night, that breaks the heartbreak with our fight. Feel it in your bones. I cannot will my own freedom without willing the freedom of others. That's Simone de Beauvoir, and a way of wrapping up that spoken word. Feel it in your bones. The fire inside won't let you stay calm, nor should you. And I'll take this moment to say again, keep protesting, keep blocking and stopping and shutting shit down, and do not fall in line with the Democratic Party. Any hope we have of saving our place on this planet cannot and will not rest inside the confines of this twisted, bought and sold establishment. The legacy they wrought brought Trump to the throne. Now we on our own, through our movements, our community organizing, our shared experiences, now we have to rise and fight. And part of that fight is definitely tied to standing up against hate and bigotry, the all-American fear of immigrants and change. Therefore, part of that is to get educated on the Middle East, of which Saudi Arabia is no small player. As I mentioned before, Saudi Arabia got a pass when it came to Trump's Muslim ban, and prior to that, Obama's bombs, despite the fact that they have had, and still do, financially and tactically supported terrorists. So what gives? Well, here to uncover some secrets of the Saudi-U.S. relationship is Medea Benjamin, activist, author, and founder of the anti-war group Code Pink, and now a nominee for the Nobel Peace Prize. Her most recent book, Kingdom of the Unjust, is a content-dense but quick read that outlines not only the inner workings of the kingdom, but our own vile ties to those extremist dictators. Take a look. So, and you talk about in the book as well the agreement in the 40s that kind of sealed our quote-unquote diplomacy, that we would support them with military and they'd sell us oil. And when you say that we only get 13% of our oil from them, is this just a sort of a continuation because we just decided that we were going to continue on? We don't really need to keep getting oil from them, it sounds like.
U.S. companies want to continue to have an important role inside Saudi Arabia, the oil companies. So they work with the Saudi state company and they make a lot of money from that. They want to also be able to determine where the oil goes elsewhere. Mm-hmm. They want control over the region. So a lot of U.S. ships in the region. It's part of the control of our government by this small fraction of oil giants, military industrial contractors. They want control and they push us into these agreements. So even though we are not as dependent on them as we were before, the big oil companies want to make sure that they are in with the Saudi government and continue to make lots of money from the Aramco company.
Another thing that I thought was important and pertinent to this conversation is the idea that you said that this book, your latest book, is not an Islamophobic book. It is talking about the Saudi regime and our relationship to the Saudi regime, but it's not Islamophobic. Talk about that distinction and why that distinction is so important.
I think one of the reasons that not only I, but so many other people that I work with in what we call this anti-war movement have never focused on Saudi Arabia is the fear of feeding into Islamophobia. But I realized this from talking to a lot of my Muslim friends, that it was something that we had to take on because the Saudi interpretation of Islam has given the entire religion a bad name. And many of my Saudi friends say, please don't call it a version of Islam, call it a perversion of Islam, and really want to make that distinction. So that's what made me feel more comfortable taking on this issue. And as I go around speaking about it, I try to make that clear. And I find that the Muslims who come to hear me are very appreciative that there is more attention being paid by progressives to the very horrendous and dangerous and repressive role that the Saudi regime plays both internally and in the broader context of the world.
So let's talk about state-sponsored terrorism. How would you compare the Saudi role in cultivating terrorists compared to ours? In the book, you wrote, "The West wages war on the Islamic State, but shakes hands with Saudi Arabia." Talk about that.
Well, I think there's a very strange and fine line that the U.S. tries to play. On the one hand, pretending that it's trying to take out extremism around the world, but of course a lot of this extremism is a result of U.S. policy, like the U.S. invasion of Iraq or the drone wars. And in addition to that, providing the weapons to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabian government and the CIA working very closely, and then these weapons end up in the hands of Al-Qaeda affiliates in Syria and Iraq and Libya. It did turn out through leaked cables that Hillary Clinton knew well that the Saudis were not only spreading this extremist ideology, but were actually funding the extremist groups like ISIS, and that it wasn't just individuals who happened to be Saudis, it was the Saudi government. So I think once this, the craziness of the election subsides, we should go back and look at some of these cables that came out and be really putting our government on the line of saying, here we have proof that you know that the Saudi government funded ISIS. How can we continue to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia?
Talk about the possibility of like diplomacy, because you don't want to just shut people out, but you also don't want to be selling weapons. Talk about a possible middle ground in having diplomatic relations and supporting the fight for democracy and human rights in Saudi Arabia without promoting militarism.
Well, I think that we need a relationship where, as Obama said, and the Saudis did not like it, the Saudis and the Iranians have to learn to, quote, share the region, have to learn to live together. And the U.S. has to continue on that path of lifting sanctions on Iran and having closer relationships with Iran while continuing to talk to the Saudis and everybody else in the region. We will never see an end to the war in Yemen if we don't have the Saudis and the Iranians talking to each other, an end to the war in Syria if we don't see the Saudis and the Iranians talking to each other. And the U.S. is now not playing anything near a, quote, honest broker. What the U.S. is an arms broker.
Now wrapping up here, I want to talk about the issue of Sunni and Shia, because Saudi Arabia is predominantly Sunni, Iran is predominantly Shia. Why is where does this stem from? Why has it created so much hate and violence? And how are we? Because we made the Iran deal, but we're also very close to Saudi Arabia. Do we have a dog in that fight?
Well, we shouldn't have a dog in that fight. And if we didn't have a dog in the fight, it would make the whole issue a lot better. Certainly, there is a Shia-Sunni divide, but we have many examples of every single country in the region having a period where they lived at peace with each other. If you look at Iraq, before the U.S. invaded, the Sunni and the Shia lived side by side. There were intermarriages. People and children in the mixed marriages didn't even know oftentimes that one parent was a Sunni and one parent was Shia. I have friends who said it never even came up. So this is not something that has always been like this and will always be this way. This has been fomented with the U.S. invasion of Iraq. It has been fomented with one-sided relationships that we have developed. It is something that could certainly be dealt with and certainly find ways of living together if the U.S. was playing a role of the real diplomat, of a real political broker, of looking for diplomatic solutions to the problem. Because if you even just look right now at ISIS, I mean, ISIS is Sunni and they're fighting Sunni governments. So it's not just a Sunni Shia divide, it's way more complicated than that.
So I know I said that was the final question, but I lied. So final question. In your book, you talk about how ISIS and Al-Qaeda were literally using textbooks that Saudi Arabia wrote. What sort of, I know that we've seen from leaked cables and things like that, the reality of the situation, but how much, what are they doing to sort of curb that? And in that same vein, is this something that they can handle and we should, because I know that in the election cycle it was, how are we going to stop ISIS, how are we going to stop ISIS? Is this something that they made it, they have to destroy it, or can we help, or what does that look like?
Well, they made it, but they can't destroy it because it's gotten out of hand. And we can't help militarily because every time we get involved militarily, we make things worse, and our very presence is a recruiting tool. So it's the people much more locally in the region that have to deal with the crisis created both by the U.S. invasion of Iraq and by this Saudi ideology and funding of extremist groups. So the best thing we could do is an arms embargo to the region.
For more on Code Pink, visit codepink.org and look for Kingdom of the Unjust both online and offline at independent bookstores across the country. And that will do it for this week's Dose of Dissent. Thank you so much for watching. Please spread and share this with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know. As always, check out the last slide to see the sites mentioned in this week's show, and be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From the Devil's Den, good night and act out. And real quick, to keep independent, non-corporatized media like this show going, donate at Occupy.com/donate. If you'd like to donate directly to Act Out, visit Patreon.com/actout.